In the past few weeks I made 9 new starters, 1 for each region, and today it's time to evolve the final 5 into their respected second stages. I still have a lot to learn about designing Fakemon, but I think these 5 designs are definitely a lot better than last time. It is now time to take a look at the second stages of Unova, where we have Surfine, who has gotten a longer body and some more leaves on its back, Pig Knight, who seems to have gotten a lot more swole and beefed up, and just quite a big body change in general. We then have D-Wad, who has grown a lot more into his body, making him look more experienced and stronger. Once again, the proportions were going to be the most important part to take into consideration. We of course started by creating his head, and surprisingly the body wasn't that difficult. I made sure to go for a cool and powerful stance to really show the power of this Pokemon. It did take a while to make it perfect, and I really had to use a lot of fine tuning. I especially spent a lot of time working on its belly marking, because this would ruin the perspective if it looked off. The hands got the same treatment because of the same issues. We then just made his horn sharper and put some extra attention to the eyes. We did this because the first stages were way too big, and I really wanted to avoid trying to tweak it once the design was already done. After this we just extended the fur around his neck and made it look bigger, and we debated about using a different tail. In the end we decided not to do so, and just to keep it simple. For the colors we used slightly darker versions on some parts, but didn't go too crazy because it might be too dark otherwise. It was a long time ago since I last made a drawing, so the rendering took a bit longer than usual. Mediator, the dirty fighter Pokemon. This Pokemon is so strong that it can flip over cement trucks with only its horns, and it brings stream trains to a halt almost instantly. Despite its overwhelming power, the fur on its body is incredibly soft and is desired by many. Although this is the case, no hunters are confident enough to go after this beast. I am extremely happy with the end result of this piece. It is a huge upgrade from the first stage, because I wasn't that happy with that one. However, it doesn't blend in too well, and that's mainly because of the eyes. They are once again a little bit too big, but I didn't want to move too far away from the first stage, of course. Next up are the second stages of Kalos. We have Quilladin, who has gotten a lot bigger and has some strong and thicker features. Braixen, who mainly changes into a bipedal animal, but also has a few extra elements like a magic wand. And we have Frogadier, who has gotten a faster look, and where the features of Froakie grew a bit further, like the pattern on his head. Similarly to the first stage, at first I wasn't sure what to make out of this one. In the end I decided to go into a skinny and lengthy design, and just build out the design elements of the first stage. As always we just started with its head and then made a simple sketch under it, and that once again turned out to be a great way to create its pose. We were able to use this simple sketch and just started slowly tweaking it to our liking. I did debate on using different eyes, but the happy look was just way too good for the lore of this Pokemon. The only thing that was a big struggle point was to make its body look like it actually had some anatomy. I know it doesn't look like it needs to have a lot, but it does still need to look anatomically correct in order to feel like a proper Pokemon. I did however want to make a few adjustments from the elements I used on the first stage, and those are mainly to use a few extra spheres on the orb on its head, and we of course gave him a bigger tail swoosh. The color stayed mostly the same, and we just used a slightly darker body color. We made sure to make the rendering look like the ones of the first stage we made, since I was amazingly happy with that one. Amphilisc, the nursing Pokemon. People have actually considered making Pokemon centers with only the Amphilian line working there, because of their healing abilities, relaxed nature and intelligence. The only drawback being the language barrier between humans and Pokemon, as one Amphilisc can fill the role of two Nurse Joys and enchant you with how great of a nurse it is. I really love this line. Not only the designs look amazing, but the rendering looks crisp as well. I guess I'm just a big fan of the color palette, because you know, pink is one of my favorite colors. I am however not sure if it blends in with the rendering, but the proportions seem to have been done properly. For the second stages of Alola, we have Dartrix, who has gotten a lot more details onto his design, like his hair and the broken up elements like his wings. We have Torracat, who builds up into a much stronger and beefier looking Pokemon. And then we have Brion, who has gotten a watery skirt and some extra elements on the ends of her flippers and ears. We will just have to build further on our previous established elements, but make sure to add a few new details as well. I'm going to be honest, and I wasn't sure what to do for this design, since snails are difficult to build out. I figured out we were just probably going to use a bigger and rugged shell, and see if we can add some extra elements here and there. We once again started by recreating its body into simple shapes, and once those were in, I could indeed focus on the different elements. At the start we made the shell a bit too high, and I guess we just used one too many increments. This was however a simple fix, and we just removed one of the layers. We then worked on the facial elements and started by adding rocky eyebrows plus a mustache. I don't know why, but I think I just have seen way too many Invincible shorts on YouTube, and I just really wanted to bring that into this design. Sticking with that theme, I also seemed it interesting to move it into a fighting type as well. This is just why the antennae look like little boxing gloves. Another element that was different was the rocky necklace we brought into it, and these were just the only elements I could think of to add. For the colors, we just slightly adjusted the colors of the first stage into a more fitting palette for a more mature Pokemon. Snurge, the beach snail Pokemon. This Pokemon uses mud baths that are full of nutrients to rejuvenate their slime. They love to use their antennae to continuously punch hard objects in order to improve muscle strength and to prepare to evolve their massive shells for storing much needed food and water when winter draws near. I am not sure about the design elements we gave this one. I guess that's mainly because of the limitations I felt of using a snail creature. I definitely think you can go in way different directions for a cool snail Pokemon, and it's definitely just because of my inexperience with drawing them. On the blending side, it blends in really well with the other Pokemon, so in the end, I'm happy with this design. I created a brush set with all my favorite brushes. I use each of them with every drawing that I make, so if you want to draw in the same style as me, I recommend checking out my website. For only €5.99, you can get the Procreate brush set, which you will be able to use in Procreate. It includes an amazing line art brush, a highlight brush which instantly makes your pieces look a lot better, and many other fantastic brushes. I also want to have a written down version of how to create Paradox Pokemon. That's why I created this step-by-step guide. It's easy to follow, and I added a bunch more tips you can use while drawing. You will also get the work files of the 2 Paradox Pokemon we created, and I added 2 work files with just a line art so you can practice coloring and shading. This guide is also available for €5.99 on my website, but since I thought you guys might be interested in buying it together with the brush set, I made it into a combi deal for only €8.99 for the both of them. That is a 25% discount, so I know what I would do. We are now moving on to the second stages of Galar. We begin with Thwacky, who hasn't gotten too different, apart from the proportions, other than some bracelets on its arms and just some minor changes on his other elements. We have Raboot, who has changed a lot more compared to Thwacky, where he now has an entire uniform and his ears and hair changed overall. Last but not least, we have Drizzile, who has changed a lot, but that's mostly because of the change into a bipedal Pokemon. Other than that, he definitely has some unique changes, like a different haircut for example, which does change his entire appearance. This design was extremely interesting because I got caught up pretty hard on trying to keep it a puffin. That's why I mainly focused on recreating a similar kind of body, and why it might look a little bit too similar to the first stage. Once he had something that resembled the Chefin design we made earlier, I started working on the new details I wanted to give him. Some of of these parts were a bigger chef head, and we decided to actually give him a uniform this time. This did give me the idea to turn it into a more savage kind of Pokemon, sort of like a pirate. I guess that would also work well with the inspiration of this line, chefs like Gordon Ramsay of course. We also tried to make it even more different by giving him an eyebrow and a small tooth on his beak. The final design element we added were the serrated blades on the tip of his wings. I would say this design might not change enough with its proportions in order to feel that much different. But yeah, my goal is to keep the biggest changes for all the final stages of these Pokemon. For the colors I wanted to play more into the Ravage territory, hence why we made the colors a lot darker than its previous stage. Shepherd, the Iron Chef Pokemon. This Pokemon lives on the rocks and loves to cook for sailors that wreck on the rocky shores. If threatened, they attack with their knife-like wings, and it feels like its evolution has made it a lot more savage. Although it's not the biggest change, I am super happy with the end result of it. I genuinely love the new direction of this line, and I actually can't wait to make its final evolution. Okay, not to blow my own horn here, but I really think I've done a good job on trying to fit it in with the other second stages of this region. Not only the rendering is decent, but the design elements I've used fit in well too. Now on to the last released region, the second stages of Paldea. We have Florigato who is gone bipedal, what seems to be quite a returning theme with these starters, and definitely grows out the elements Brigatito already had on his design. We have Crocodile who has eaten a bit too many Big Macs and has grown a cheddar cheese sombrero on his head. And then we have the final one, Quaxwell, who has gotten a way bigger brain and attitude. The last part is mainly because of the new eyebrow he got, and he just got a lot of extra details on the rest of its body. I knew from the start that I wanted to bring the bullfighting elements way more into this design, especially because the first stage couldn't showcase it that well due to the limitations of its baby body proportions. This is exactly why I wanted to challenge myself into using a very dynamic pose, and I say challenge because I'm very inexperienced on this department. I really wanted this pose to feel like he's inviting you to a battle and to show off his red frill more. I did however struggle a bit more on the head, which was mainly because I didn't know how to make it look like the same type of animal and the perspective I wanted to use. Once I had something I was happy with, I decided to add another frill to the tip of its tail, and just like that, the design was already finished. But in hindsight it definitely looks too empty, so I might be adding some new things for the third stage. For the colors we just once again went with a darker and more mature looking palette, and I still think this was the right decision to move a bit further away from the typical blue dragon colors. Dragamator, the bullfighter Pokemon. This Pokemon uses the frill around its neck to provoke Paldean Tauros into charging towards it. Its speed and grace is a sight to behold as it puts on a performance for all to see. Every applause Dragamator receives raises its ego even further. I will say that I'm happy with the challenge I gave myself, and I don't even think the execution is that bad. There are however many things that could be improved anatomically, but as I said before, this is still a big learning journey for me, and I'm still improving big time. When we talk about the blending in with the others of this design, I will have to admit that I failed miserably on this element. I definitely think it's due to the lack of details I mentioned earlier, so it will just be another fun challenge to resolve this issue on the final stage. Well everyone, these were the final 5 second stages we had to make for the 4th starter for every region series, and I will say that I'm super happy with the progress I'm making on making Fakemon. There is definitely still a lot of room for improvement, but I like where we are going. Next week we'll have a compilation for all the second stages, and the week after that I will upload a video about how I added my own Fakemon into Minecraft. Goodbye!